Use the force, Luke.
Live long and prosper.
I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Shut up and take my money.
By Grabthar's hammer. What a saving.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
X never, ever marks the spot.
Winter is coming. You're a wizard, Harry.
Stay a while and listen.
Hey, old Kermit the Frog here.
Your ties are cool.
So say we all.
This is a Play on Nerds. Welcome to episode 202 of A Play on Nerds. I'm Jarman.
And I'm Steve, and we are here to co-host the hell out of this thing.
Hell yeah. And this time around, we're talking about a great movie that's supposedly coming out soon that the kids will love, and I'm sure you're all going to see, called Harold and the Purple Crayon, where one child's imagination can create universes, and just your imagination is the limit as to what fantastical things can happen when you have that purple crayon. And just like that, and honoring the rule of three, we are talking about another world where an imaginative child has control over the world around him and bad things happen to him, but through the power of his imagination solves his problems. Neverending Story III.
That's right. The third installment that some say is the best one.
I don't know who they are.
Not us, but some.
Some people out there. But before we get to that, Steve, what have you been up to since we last talked?
Oh, man. Well, we had a whole vacation. Anna's mom came and visited. Was in town for 8 days. So we took her to camp, and she got to go to Kennywood. And
explain Kennywood to people who don't know what this is.
Kennywood, I think, is one of, if maybe the oldest still family-owned amusement park in the United States. It's been in Pittsburgh for more than 100 years, something like that.
Okay, I think you mentioned that on the podcast once before, maybe, yeah.
And so this has been around forever.
Gotcha.
So it's very much a staple of being a Pittsburgher.
Pittsburgher. Oh my gosh, I've never heard that term before.
So, Pittsburghian? I don't know, that didn't feel good either. So Kennywood camp, and then we took a few-day trip and we went to Cleveland.
Nice.
Got an Airbnb, and there we went to the zoo, and we got to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And the Cleveland Zoo is like one of the most famous in the U.S., isn't it?
It is. It's huge.
Oh, okay.
And here's what I'll say about this zoo that was very impressive to me compared to others that I've been to. It did not have the widest range of species or the most animals. Like, our Pittsburgh Zoo has more animals than this Cleveland Zoo, and the Pittsburgh Zoo is half the size. But their enclosures are so cool in that, like, the tiger thing was not just like one cage. It was this big open area with multiple viewing spaces and then a bridge that went up over your heads that the tigers could then go up and cross into another full area.
So you can just stare at their junk the whole time.
Yeah, lots of spaces, but a lot of the areas were like this, so it gave viewing from multiple locations.
That's pretty cool.
For a lot of these bigger animals. That, and they had a lot of interactive stuff for kids that wasn't dependent on the animals, which was really nice. And so even though like some of the animals were sleeping or it was kind of hot, so a lot of them were just kind of hiding, the kids still were doing stuff.
Right.
So like at the bear exhibit, they had a climbing structure in the middle of this indoor bear exhibit that kids could climb up in and go up to these windows at the top and get a view of the bear exhibit that like adults couldn't get.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. So I just appreciated that as a parent, that even though some of the animals weren't super active, the kids were still engaged.
Yeah, it's more like a quality over quantity kind of thing.
Yeah. And then we came back. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was cool. Just a lot of neat memorabilia and some cool context to see how things were put together and the different areas that rock came out of and that sort of thing. But some weird omissions, like Bruce Springsteen had like one very small thing. Queen, I didn't see at all.
That's weird.
Anything. So there were a few like that.
It's not just U.S. musicians, right? So that's not why Queen wasn't there. It's like...
No, there were people like Rolling Stones had a whole wall. The Beatles had like a whole section of the thing.
That is weird.
So yeah, some strange omissions that kind of caught me off guard, but like Steely Dan, Van Morrison, these sort of staples of what I think of like as classic rock just weren't there. So I don't know. It might be a rights thing. Who knows? But still very cool to see. My kids did not give a shit about any of it, but I loved it.
And it was also your birthday since we last talked.
That's right. For my birthday, we went and did a camp day. That was how we celebrated. And then I heard someone had an anniversary.
Oh, I did. It was my first anniversary with the wife, and it was lovely. We went to a place. Thank you. We went to a place called All Fired Up. One of those places where you can basically pick out what like a clay item you want from their shelves.
Oh yeah,
and you paint it right there on site. You can BYOB type of thing, and then they fired up, and they just told us today it's ready, so we can go back and pick it up. And we got a hotel like right there in downtown Winter Park, like Park Avenue, and just stayed there. And it was really nice, a little nice little evening out. But yeah, other than that, just been working my ass off and heading to Rochester, New York, near that area next week. So I will be gone, but the show will still go on because we record these things in advance, so you guys will still be hearing things. But yeah, so it was a good time, good week. Very busy, but I'm still alive. That's what matters.
Yeah, we're all still here.
But I think it takes us to some nerdy news. That's the wrong music.
Recommend. Oh no.
Here we go.
It's time for Nerdy News.
Well, this week, the cheeky name for my cheeky story is, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a hippo?
Uh-huh.
Well, the Royal Veterinary College in North Mimms, Hertfordshire in the UK did a study of the movement of large land mammals. They watched hours and did motion tracking and like visual step-by-step, frame-by-frame tracking of tons of large animals. And in species like elephants, even when they're at top speed, they keep at least 2 feet on the ground at all times. Like they don't run. Animals that big, if you start running, run the risk of really, really hurting themselves. So even when an elephant is like running in a video, watch their feet. They're still, it's like a controlled, very fast walk is really what it comes down to. And then even rhinos can trot, where both feet on one side of their body are moving simultaneously. But because of that, they typically have 2 feet on the ground at any given moment. But they started looking at hippos and wondering if hippos share the same characteristic. Well, they looked at hours and hours of video, both from a like natural hippo park in the U.S. Where like refugee hippos go. I'm not sure how to say it. And then hours of videos that people have taken at zoos on YouTube and that sort of stuff. And they found that in about 15% of cases, when hippos really get up to speed, typically when they are chasing off rivals, that they get all 4 of their feet up off the ground.
Jeez.
And they are now the biggest, heaviest mammal that they know of that can really pull this off. So this brings into question biomechanic assumptions that have been made about the development of large land animals. And so they're even starting to look at dinosaurs, because the assumption was for dinosaurs, most of them were so large that they had to behave like the elephant. They had to keep at least 2 feet on the ground at any given moment to maintain. But now that this has been proven in hippos, they're starting to look, okay, is it possible that, you know, dinosaurs got a little airtime?
I have 2 things to say about this. One, hippos are even more terrifying now. They're like one of those terrifying creatures we know.
They're chasing you faster than you realize.
And they're devastating and terrifying. And 2, they're missing one large mammal that's much larger than a hippo that never has any feet on the ground when it moves. And that's the blue whale.
That's right. No feet ever.
Oh, ever on the ground. Ever.
Flies.
But no, that's very frightening, and thank you for that, Steve.
Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter who swam with crocodiles and captured them and put himself in harm's way hundreds of times, maintained, even when a stingray took his life, maintained that the only animals that truly scared him were hippos.
Oof. They're aggressive.
They are territorial and they shoot to kill, man. They do not play around.
Don't mess with hippos. They're hungry
So
all the time.
That's been Oh, and sometimes in cases where there's not enough food, they do resort to eating meat. Just for the record.
Oh, I didn't know they didn't eat
videos
meat.
of them. There's visuals only when their normal food supply of like plants and stuff isn't available. But there are videos of them eating zebras and shit.
There's like fucking, I'm hungry.
Yeah. So that's been. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's a hippo.
But that brings us to our main segment, all about the Neverending Story 3.
Man, we get this opening shot of an ancient man with a giant beard in a cave shivering against the cold as he flips through a book and warns the audience about the nasty, a terrible plague that will take over Fantasia and takes over when people turn away from books, and a human hero is needed to lead them from this peril. We then get a check-in on Bastian Balthazar Bucks from the first two movies, who's running from a group of bullies that he calls the Nasties.
Oh.
He hides in the library where he runs into the conveniently placed book custodian and curmudgeon from the first two movies, Mr. Coriander. Bastian goes through some books and then miraculously pulls from the shelf The Neverending Story. It's the name of the movie. He reads the story to himself in a convenient way for us to get a catch up on what happened in his life. Well, his dad met a new woman. He's got a new stepmom and in turn a new stepsister. His dad and him have moved into their house and he's starting at a new school. He has classes. He clashes with his new stepsister. And then tries to like tell her about the Neverending Story and Orin, and it does not help his case at all. Talks about the childlike empress. It's not great. She rightfully thinks he is weird. Bastian smears his hair with gel to look cool on his first day, but is quickly singled out, included by the Nasties.
That same thing happened to me in middle school, so I totally get it.
Children flee before them, and the Nasties drag Bastian to a boiler room where a conveniently placed janitor saves the day. Bastian makes a run for it, which catches us up to the present in the Neverending Story, where he's running in the library. Bastian grabs the Neverending Story and escapes into Fantasia before the bullies can find him. The Nasties do find the book and begin to piece together its mysteries, realizing that they're reading about themselves and then what's happening in that moment. We follow Bastian to Fantasia, where he meets up with Engiwook and Urgle, who are the little gnome people from the first one, like the science gnomes. The Nasties put the book through hell and begin tearing books off the shelves and disheveling the library, and fire and mayhem strike out across Fantasia in the Neverending Story. Falkor crash lands as disaster continues to strike, and back outside, the Nasties finally leave with the book. We do get a check-in with the Rockbiter family, where the Rockbiter has a wife, and she tells him to take Junior and out on his bike and find some tasty rocks. And they sing, was it like Born to be Wild? What was it?
Born to be Wild, yeah.
It was Born to be Wild? Man, it is so dated it hurts.
It's weird.
We then get a check-in with the childlike empress, who has sought the keeper of books, who is that old guy we saw at the beginning, to figure out what's causing all this mayhem. She uses Orin to summon Bastian to save Fantasia once more. She gives him the Orin so he can wish himself back, retrieve the book, and save them all. Just as he's wishing back Falkor, a tree and a baby Rockbiter and gnomes all kind of hitch a ride with him and end up in the real world. And so now it's established that he has to get them all back together, wish them back to Fantasia, and then save the book. Because if he doesn't, if he saves the book without them, Fantasia will exclude them.
Very complicated.
It's like a Star Trek original series episode. The Fantasians get abruptly introduced into the real world, with Falkor almost flying into a plane, the Rockbiter baby defacing Mount Rushmore, and the Tree Man witnessing the mass murder of his people by loggers. Bastian just goes home to look for his friends, and his sister makes just everything worse. She is just the worst through most of this movie. Meanwhile, the Nasties are in their secret hideout behind a dumpster reading the book and decide to use the book to then control Bastion's story. They're starting to get a hold of the mechanics of the movie. Bastion spots Falcor and the rock baby in the sky. They find themselves in the middle of Chinese New Year parade for some reason. The Nasties try to grab and steal the Orin, but they narrowly escape them. Bastion hides Baby Rockbiter and goes looking for the other companions, but Baby wrecks his kitchen, and the parents think Bastion did it. Because if you remember, in the second movie, it opens with him wrecking the kitchen.
I forgot about that.
So it's a callback. But his sister is starting to think that something's going on, and she sort of realizes the truth, and she takes Orin. We get a comedic check-in with the mom and dad Rockbiters, who are like having domestic issues because he lost the baby. Like, it's weird.
An episode of Dinosaurs or something.
It was like an episode of Dinosaurs. You're not wrong. Bastion heads back to school and is immediately pranked by the Nasties. Nicole, his stepsister, is forced to hand over the Orin to a nasty teacher, but Nicole wishes for the teacher to leave them alone and to go back to her cage. And the teacher does it. The Orin is real. The Nasties grab Bastion for the Orin, but he tells him he doesn't have it because Nicole is out on a spending spree at the mall. All of Bastion's pals reconvene at his home through various ways. The gnomes were mailed and they've got to go potty. It's an okay joke. But now he has to get Orin, wish them all back to Fantasia, and then save Fantasia. Luckily, in addition to Chinese New Year the day before, the next day is Halloween.
Somehow,
with no other mention in this thing. They head to the mall to look for Nicole, who is having a shopping spree using the Orin. The Nasties are looking for her, though, and snatch and grab the Orin, making their way to their secret hideout, which is conveniently in the parking lot. The baddies manifest awful giant bug creatures that kind of look like shrimp in Fantasia as they ransack the place and attack people, and the princess is helpless to sit and watch. The mall is in shambles as the Nasties released more nastiness into the world and people begin turning on each other and fighting each other. Bastion's dad and stepmom start just destroying each other verbally. It's great. And then Nicole reveals her deep character development, that she's so mean because she doesn't want to lose more family.
Yeah.
Nicole and Bastion fight. She finally apologizes and they go to find the Nasties. After a game of keep away with the Orin, they do get it back. But then Nicole reads the Neverending Story out loud and says that Bastion's like an adept martial arts fighter, and he's able to fight off the Nasties as Falcor breaks in and scares the rest of them away. And with the book back and Orin returned, Bastion and Nicole wish all the people back, and then they run home and have really awkward hugs and call each other's parents mom and dad, despite there really not being enough development for that to have happened. Back in Fantasia, the tree man returns Rock Jr. to his parents. The gnomes finally make it to the bathroom. Bastion and Nicole are best friends, and the Nasties have cleaned up their act and are dedicated to learning because Bastion wished it to be so. Mr. Coriander recollects the Neverending Story, and Bastion and Nicole share a weird jumping high five in a dead-end hallway to end the movie. So, Jarman, was this the first time you'd seen Neverending Story 3?
Yes, for sure. I know I'd seen the first one, obviously, multiple times. I think I've seen the second one once or twice. I'd never seen this one before. It was an experience.
Both the first and second one are gems. This one is so incredibly bad.
It was not good. But the good, we'll start with the good stuff. So I thought it had a great soundtrack. Hence, I didn't say score. I said soundtrack. So like the songs that were in it were also 90s. They were so nostalgic to me, like perfect encapsulation of that time period, like the hip hop and like random rock, besides Born to Be Wild, but everything else was
weird.
Yeah, everything else was really fun. I love the starring kid, and it took me a while to realize who he was, but I finally figured out that he's the kid from Free Willy. But yeah, he was great in Free Willy. He was good in this. Like, he acted the hell out of this. That was great. Jack Black as the head bully of the Nasties was a great just discovery here.
And really was kind of like a step above everyone else in the film.
It showed that he was going to go places.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. It really did.
He was great in this whole movie. The artwork and the set direction and the creature work with when you were in Fantasia was pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
So I was surprised that there was actually really, beautiful set work. I wonder how much of those shots they actually just took from the first two movies because like they didn't have the budget for this one, but
they didn't use a lot, honestly. But if you look at the sets they used, a lot of them, besides like the Rockbiter's cave, maybe the little hut for the gnomes, were very generic. They were like general forest setting, painted backdrop setting.
Beautifully painted backdrops, but
Crystal Cave, like they had that one set for the Childlike Empress.
Yeah.
They had the gnome hut, they had the rock place, but like those were really they kept it limited, which I think that's
probably a good idea.
Benefit.
Yeah. And like the costumes and the makeup for the creatures were pretty good, but you could tell it was a step below the first couple movies. But yeah, that's kind of the good stuff. What about your good stuff of the movie?
I agree. The creatures were good. All of them were done by the Jim Henson Creature Shop.
Yeah.
And a bunch of sort of secondary puppeteers, like B-level puppeteers that worked on things like, in fact, Fraggle Rock did puppeteering and did characters for this.
Very cool.
The most notable, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he's in the Pa Gorg suit for a bunch of Fraggle Rock, was the tree guy.
Ah, gotcha.
So I agree. The visuals when they were very enchanting. The one exception maybe being the Rockbiters. It just didn't.
They seemed cheaper looking. Yeah.
Yeah, they felt cheap. They felt very foam.
Yeah,
but
like
the tree was really good. Mm-hmm. That rabbit that kept coming back, I think was like the best animatronic in the entire, or puppet in the entire thing, and was just like a rabbit. That could
have been in Dark Crystal or something. It would have fit right in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Some other good things, you're right. Jack Black did well. None of the acting was particularly wooden or bad. It was only as bad as the script.
Yeah, that was the lower part of that.
But otherwise, this movie just has some big issues, not only from like a story perspective, but how they decided to put the plot together was all just felt extremely jumbled.
Yeah.
The fact that once again, like they're in a Chinese New Year parade and then Halloween the next day. I'm like, why couldn't they have made Halloween be the next day and somehow put that into the rest of the plot?
Yeah, make it more important than just convenience.
So instead of him doing his hair up crazy, he wears an embarrassing costume.
Yeah.
To school. And that's why the bullies pick on him. And they get to all dress like nightmares or whatever because they're the bullies. And then they can be in that costume the whole time. And it makes perfect sense.
And they could have capitalized that with releasing it on Halloween or something, that would have been good too.
Oh, yeah. And then other little things like the fact that like he's running from the Nasties, he finds the book, he gets into the Neverending Story, but then immediately after they show the Childlike Empress talking to this guy who says they need a human hero, and then she wishes him there. What? But he was already in Fantasia.
Right.
I don't understand why they decided that he needed to wish himself to Fantasia. It would have made way more sense if at the right moment she wished him out and he got sucked into the book.
Right.
Like that would have made so much more sense, but nah.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
So there were some of those, even just story element things where I went, guys, come on. Just someone could have thought for 5 more minutes about this.
Make it less clunky.
Just less clunky.
And that score was super cheap, and it was not an orchestra this time. Obviously, it was a MIDI machine. Like that's why I said the score was not good.
I did look at who did the music to see if they'd gone on, and they've done a bunch of stuff, but it's all like C and B level.
You could tell
stuff. Yeah, you can feel it.
Oh, and I felt like
I'm going to say not a super forgivable movie.
Yeah, the dad also was just like he was terrible most of the movie, like mean to the wife, and that was just like not cool. Also, I just really distracted me was the modern references from the tree guy the whole time. He kept making like references to companies and technologies that aren't in Fantasia. No one else did that. That's from Fantasia. So it seemed like, why does he know all that stuff? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. He was almost like a New York comic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why is it? And also they made, I know Falcor Falcor's more mysterious and interesting and old feeling. In this movie, he felt really dumb, like he was just an adult. I don't know why they decided to play him that way.
Well, he looked so bad in this movie.
Yeah. I had heard previously they didn't have access to the original anymore, so they had to make a whole new one for him, the Falcor.
And that makes sense, especially if they were redoing all the other, like the old Falcor with new puppets probably would have looked real weird.
Yeah.
But even so, it's like you guys could have learned something from just maybe watching the first two movies.
Or get the original designs, because he looks so strange and thin, creepy looking.
But yeah, so I agree. Everything was a step down. Like, without a doubt, every single aspect was a step down for this movie.
I did feel it was
maybe
fun.
Jack Black. Jack Black was the shining star in this whole thing.
Very true.
And his cronies. I thought his cronies really did back him up well.
Yeah, they were crazy, high energy. They were silly and over the top, and it was fun. And that's why I felt this whole movie was kind of fun, but it was just hard, like you said, hard to follow, and just not lacking that epicness, and that it wasn't moving like the first movie was too. Like, where it's just like, oh, this really gets me in the heartstrings too. This didn't do that at all. It was just, and no Atreyu.
Well, that's because no one went anywhere. There was literally no journey.
Yeah.
He was running from the things, and then he wished himself from point A to point B, had a scene, and then the princess wished him from point B to point C. And then he got returned from point C to point D, again, wished. And then once he got to point D, it was just him looking for people. There was no
character arcs.
physical path for him to follow. Right.
Only Nicole, the sister, had any kind of character arc, and she wasn't a very fleshed out character to begin with.
She wasn't. There was a huge, basically the first 2/3 of the film where I was like, are they going to redeem her? Because they have not hinted at any aspect that she might be hiding some deep pain or doesn't want to feel this way. Like, she's pretty much a jerk for the sake of being a jerk for most of the film. Mm-hmm. But it got to the point where I was like, is something bad going to happen to her and they don't want us to feel bad about it? Like, it felt like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Where like that guy who's a jerk, then you don't have to care when he gets mauled by the mutant dogs.
Yeah, he's going to get killed.
Right. You don't have to feel bad.
So yeah, not the best.
No, not the best, not the worst Rule of Three movie we've watched. I did get through it in one sitting. Thank God it was only like an hour and 20 minutes long.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. But some trivia for this flick. We got Jack Black signed on because he was a big fan of the original Neverending Story, but he was so unhappy with how this film turned out that he refused to discuss it in interviews for several years afterward. Karen Howard's original screenplay had Bastian in Fantasia for most of the storyline, with his new stepsister reading the book and initially trying to sabotage Bastian's story, but eventually starting to help him out. This was later changed to have Bastian spend most of the story in the real world, with the nasties being the ones who tamper with the book, and his stepsister instead getting her hands on the A-rune and using it for selfish purposes. So it could have been a different movie, but they probably couldn't afford as much Fantasia time. Warner Brothers optioned to buy the worldwide distribution rights to the film, but passed on it, and the studio still released the film in Germany, Britain, and France due to pre-existing distribution deal with the producers. So Miramax took up the North American release, but due to an editing snafu, one audio track has the music from Warner Brothers' Family Entertainment division, complete with Bugs Bunny's carrot chomping playing over the Miramax logo in certain copies of this movie, which is funny. It's the only film in the trilogy not to feature the original theme song over the closing credits, which pissed me off. I was waiting for that song this whole movie. Never heard it. Greatest song ever. Only film in the trilogy not to feature Atreyu. He was just not around. No reason given. The house that Bastian and his dad move into with Nicole and Jane is the same house from Happy Gilmore from 2 years later, 1996. Same house. So that's fun.
I will mention one thing about the music, that all of a sudden, A Kiss from a Rose by Seal was playing, and I went, what the hell?
Yeah,
and
that was out of nowhere.
I think Nicole was listening to it, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I looked, and this was before Batman Forever. This movie came out a year before Batman Forever.
Really?
So Kiss from a Rose was in Neverending Story 3 before it was in the movie that made it famous.
And I thought I heard that was written for the movie, basically, but no, wow.
Unless production timelines wound up in a real weird way, where like maybe it was made for that and then licensed, and then Batman took longer to make. Like, there are some weird, timeline things that could have happened, but it was certainly in this movie, and this movie was 93 and Batman Forever was 94.
That's really weird.
Yeah, man.
The debut. But we got a little game for Steven here.
Ooh.
I'm going to call this character conversions. We won't make it go too long because there are a few characters, but basically what I'm going to have you do, Steve, with your supreme D&D knowledge.
Oh, crap.
I want you to take each of the crew of this film, there's the 4 of them, I believe, and turn them into a D&D archetype character. Not like a typical character, but any kind of character you think they would be if you had to transform them. So we have...
Just to confirm, we're talking about the Tree Guy,
Rock Baby,
Rockbiter.
Yep.
Rock Baby.
Bastion.
And
And Falcor. If you want to throw in the sister, if we have time, we can do that.
I might throw in the gnomes. Maybe I'll throw in the gnomes.
Oh, the gnomes. That makes more sense. Because we
Gnomes.
also have Jack Black's character, but that could be a little much.
Okay, so for the tree, I'm going to make him like a bard. Because he's just always doing stand-up bits for some reason. So he's always performing. And he's like, he stumbles his way through things, which is very bardish in that regard. So you could do that as bardic inspiration, these little bits of luck that get him through things.
His New York style comic routine.
Right. Let's see. Baby Rockbiter has got to be a barbarian, doesn't take hits, like reduces damage, but it's just like a flailing imbecile, really low int.
Very low int, yes.
I could see playing that character like a giant man baby looking for his parents as a barbarian would be a hilarious.
Give me kiss.
Yeah. Put him down. Cookie.
Put him down.
Bastion, I'll make him. He had no skills for me to point at, unfortunately.
It's true.
So because of that, I'm going to choose the most useless class, Ranger, for Bastion. Because he looks out of that telescope a whole lot, so he does scouting.
He knows some martial arts.
He knows some martial abilities. Like for some reason, he knows the wish spell, which is weird, but whatever.
Yeah. Unlimited wish spell.
Unlimited wish spell. We're just going to overlook it. And then Falcor, I guess like a druid.
Yeah, it's like takes wild shape into the...
Stuck in wild shape.
There you go.
But then they'd have to be like a Githyanki so that you wouldn't have to transform to actually speak to people. Because you'd have to have telepathy, or you'd have to take like a dip in Warlock, or there's like a couple other ways you could do it. But yeah, because he can't speak as an animal, he'd have to be putting words into people's minds.
That makes sense.
And then for the gnome, I think the gnome is the easiest one. It's like a little gnome artificer.
Oh yeah, artificer.
Tinkerer. I wish that they had done more with the gnomes, because it was so weird to bring them back from the previous movie and like literally put them in a box for most of it.
Literally in a box, yeah.
Literally put them in a box for most of the film. But yeah, so there we go. There's the party.
Well, let's do first. So we did it pretty fast. Let's do this. Do the Jack Black character. What was the main bully?
Oh, Jack Black. He is like a mastermind rogue.
Oh,
like evil at heart and smart. They show that all of them are smart at the end because then they're all very studious, which means they could do it, but uses those smarts for like evil. Because Jack Black really does figure out the mechanics of the book and how he's going to use it against Bastion. So in that way, smart, but backstabbing.
I like it. All right. Well, there we go. That is our D&D group right there. They were kind of like archetypes-ish, but didn't really explore that very much.
Kind of. And it was kind of a plot.
There was something there.
Ish.
Maybe. Ish. But that brings us to some radical recommends.
Recommend.
If you have the means, I highly recommend picking one up.
What do you recommend I do?
I recommend Pleasant.
All right. Well, this week, I'm going to talk about something I think we've actually talked about prior, but now it's done. Now we're finished all the episodes, and that is on Disney Plus, the new Star Wars series, Acolyte. So I think Acolyte is one of those shows that started very clumsily, but I am happy to say, spoiler free, now that we're past the end of at least this season, that it really did get tighter. The characters got tighter, and the plot became more compelling as the season went on. Really what it suffered from is in the beginning, they are purposely withholding parts of the story from the audience. But because of that, it feels incomplete in the first few episodes before they start revealing these things.
So you're kind of lost at first.
Right. And that was on purpose, but maybe not executed that well. But as these pieces came into place, it did really make for a very satisfying ending.
I heard the ending was good. That's all I know. I don't know any spoilers, but that was...
Yeah. No spoilers, but it feels much more complete and tight than the beginning of the season, which, as I said, it felt clumsy, the beginning of the season.
Does it feel like a one-off series, or that there's going to be another season?
There's definitely going to be another season.
Okay, gotcha.
Without a doubt. The young woman who's in the main role is too big of a star for them to like. They invested in young talent that they clearly want to keep using.
Gotcha. That's a prequel to like everything we've ever known, right? About Star Wars.
By a couple 100 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Like there are only a handful of characters that we could even feasibly know that could even feasibly be alive in this time period.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's like Wookiees can live for hundreds of years in theory. And like Yoda is in theory like 500 or 600 years old when we meet him.
That's true.
And there are some other alien species that can have crazy long lifespans. So it's feasible we could see characters we know, especially in the case of droids.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's a very standalone story.
I like it. It's the one I haven't seen yet.
So my recommendation is not necessarily Acolyte, but finish Acolyte. I know the beginning was clumsy and didn't feel great, but it really does complete in the last 3 episodes.
Very nice. That's one Star Wars show I haven't seen yet, so I'm looking forward to it.
Highly recommend.
But that brings us to trailer reviews. All right, so this week we're talking about Captain America, Brave New World. The trailer just finally dropped for that, and we have our new Captain America and Anthony Mackie, and also a new General Ross, because unfortunately William Hurt passed away, so they've replaced him with Harrison Ford. So seems like in this trailer we have kind of a lot going on, but not really showing a lot of what's the kind of the main crux of things. I don't know what you gather from it, Steve.
Okay, so I did not care for or about Falcon Winter Soldier.
The TV show.
So the mood that this has and the tone that it is setting seems to be very much along those lines, which makes me immediately a little bit disinterested. To the point where this whole trailer, in my opinion, is like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's still not quite Captain America, I guess. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Ooh, Red Hulk. Blah, 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 blah. Like everything until Red Hulk showed up made me go, good. More Falcon Winter Soldier, where we're not sure if he's Captain America or not. And he still doesn't have superpowers. How's he going to do this? How is he not going to die immediately? Guys. Please.
He's a human with no powers.
He's a human with no... Yeah, oh, he's got a wingsuit. That's great. He's literally going out against superhumans. What do you mean he's got a wingsuit? So it's just... That aspect is hard for me. There are a few draws. You got like Giancarlo Esposito in there.
He's
new
everything.
actor, new face. They posed him in the trailer as a villain, which tells me that he will absolutely not be a villain.
I like that twist. That'd be cool.
His name in the comics, I think he's portraying, I think the character's name is Washington Bridge or something very, very typical like that. And he is like an operative that did a lot of things with Nick Fury and led a strike team with Nick Fury at one point. So my thought is that Giancarlo Esposito is being brought in to replace Samuel L. Not in the role, but in the archetype that Samuel has been filling. As
that position.
Fury. That position. So while they're posing him as a villain, I can almost guarantee we are going to get Giancarlo Esposito as a longer term role in the MCU.
It would be crazy to have him in a one-off because he's become so big at this point, you know.
And he's already got contracts with Disney because he did Mandalorian. Like, yeah,
he was the mirror on the wall. And
I'm willing to bet we're going to have Giancarlo Esposito in our MCU lives for the next 10 to 15 years. I'll put money on it.
Yeah. I like the original, the series a little more than you probably, but mostly because I think it did right what was Samuel Jackson's series called? I've already forgotten.
Oh God, was it just Fury? What was that one?
No, it was God, I don't remember. But basically, it flopped terribly, and I think what it was trying to do, what I think Falcon and Winter Soldier did much better, which was have a show that's not all about superpowers, but more about espionage and like figuring, Secret Wars or something. That's what it was called. Or
Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion. But yeah, more about it did that pretty well, I thought, with international espionage. There was an international story. So that way it didn't matter so much that Falcon didn't have superpowers, but he wasn't encountering people with superpowers. So they're taking a version of the superhuman serum. But so I liked it. But I mean, so I would love to see where this goes. But you're right. It's like, what is this one guy going to do? But with Iron Man, they did the same thing. He has no superpowers and he still did a lot of cool stuff. So I don't know.
I know. And he does get like a suit from Wakanda, I think, at the end of.
So it's like vibranium.
Yeah. So like there might be some abilities there or some things gained there. But once again, it's hard for me to see like Falcon going up against, or Captain America now going up against like Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Or Thanos. What the hell is he going to do?
And we still had that with even with Captain America. He's not bulletproof. He can get shot. He can get, taken down, but he still managed to be cool. But he had superhuman strength. So there is that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I don't know. I will go see this movie. I'm excited for it. It is certainly going to be sort of a kickoff in what we can expect in the new, now revised chapter of Marvel.
Yeah.
Because what Iger came back as CEO and said, stop everything. We're going to reevaluate every single thing. You add that to the fact that Jonathan Majors no longer being Kang and Kang being unloaded from the gun that has been loaded for like the past X amount of productions of the Kang dynasty and all that. I'm excited to see where this is going to take the MCU in its next real chapter.
And a post Deadpool world, because
really what this is.
Deadpool's going to be the start of that, really. And then this movie will come out after that. So
I think that Deadpool at the end of the day is going to be the real introduction of mutants into the MCU. I think that is how they're going to use the wildly popular Deadpool vehicle.
It'd be smart.
Because we've already seen tons of mutants in it. So I think they're going to use the wild popularity of Deadpool as a tool in their favor to get the MCU in. To get the X-Men in.
And have all new X-Men probably at some point.
Oh, yeah. They've got to recast Hugh Jackman. They got to be done. In fact, I could have sworn the recasting decision was made years ago at some sort of powwow between all the
well, they
Disney
never announced
execs.
one if they did, but
yeah. So I'm quasi hopeful, but at the same time, the subject matter and tone I have seen so far,
it's like, we'll see. Maybe it gets good reviews and we'll go see it. So what do you give this one, Steve?
All right. So Gary Busey comes in from a long day at work.
Wherever he's working.
He's retreading tires. And they have him sweep up the sawdust, but he doesn't tell anybody. He eats some of it. So he's had a long day. He's full. Comes in, hangs up the keys to his golf cart because that's all he's allowed to drive. And comes inside and is like, Raul, are you home? He goes into the fridge and opens it up and shifts aside some beers so he can grab the canister of like bat blood and his own urine. Refreshing. And he's wandering through and he goes to the bathroom and opens the door and goes, Raul, are you in here? And there's Raul Julia standing in the mirror in like ripped shorts, just painting himself red. And he turns and him and Gary share a long stare. And Raul just goes, Gary, can we just not talk about this? And Gary goes, yeah, I'll give you this one. And he closes the door and goes out.
No, that's a bonding moment right there.
That's right. Gary's put Raul through so much.
The least he can do. Let's give him
the
that.
least he can do.
My review for this is we have Raul Julia coming home from a long day of work where he was, saving children in a local charity auction thing that he works for.
Yeah.
And he comes home and he hears clanking and like a screwdriver and all this stuff, and these noises in the other room. He walks in and he sees Gary leaned over this thing, really working on it. And he turns around and he reveals that he's got this globe that he has attached a rudimentary shield to, and he's been shining it, making it all pretty. And he's like, Gary, what the hell are you doing? What is that? And he's like, it's a brave new world. It's got a shield. It's so brave and it's pretty and new. Captain America, Brave New World.
Boo. I heard it.
Okay. All right.
I'm just not going to acknowledge it.
Can you give me this one?
Yeah, you can have it, John.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
I just wanted for once for Gary Busey to be the level-headed one.
Just for once.
Just for once.
We gave him that one. Yeah, there you go.
He goes back to drinking his blood and urine.
God, terrible.
Well, that brings us to the end of episode 202. Join us next time when, in honor of Alien Romulus, we explore another sci-fi thriller about a ragtag crew facing threats unknown in space. Of course, we're talking about 1981 classic Galaxy of Terror.
Of Terror. The one you've all seen, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's a classic in its own right. I'm excited for us to get into it. And I'm genuinely excited about Alien Romulus. They just came out with their final trailer.
All right.
And it looks great. For the first time in a while, I'm cautiously optimistic about alien stuff.
I didn't hate Prometheus. I'm that guy. So there you go.
All right. Well, come on back for Galaxy of Terror, and we will be your nerdy co-hosts if you be our nerdy audience. Thanks again, Internet.
Stay nerdy, my friends.
Thanks for listening to A Play on Nerds. Feel free to email feedback at aplayonnerds.com with all your questions or comments.
Shoot us a message on Facebook or Twitter and earn yourself a sweet shout out on the show.
Review us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts so even more nerds can find us. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, we aren't picky.
Check out our entire back catalog and other offerings at aplayonnerds.com.
And how?